Welcome to the Collective Genius Podcast, the show for real estate investors who are looking to scale.
Welcome, everyone, to the Collective Genius Podcast. This is the Collective Genius. For those that are not familiar, obviously, we are the community for real estate investors that are looking to scale and continue to grow their businesses. I've got a real treat for you today. These are, as I like to call them, conversations with a genius. Genius may be a bit much for today's guest, but he is someone that I look up to, maybe not in stature, but definitely someone I look up to as a business owner, as a father, as a husband, and just a really, really good friend. Today's guest, another Collective Genius member, Mr. Glenn Schworm. Thank you for joining me, my friend.
I've already been keeping track of the jabs, too. We've already had 2 so far, so I thought I would contain myself. But if you want to start that way, you set the tone. I'm ready to roll. You know that, right?
I want the people to see the relationships that you get from a community like the Collective Genius. And I can honestly say, I don't need any questions pre-written, even though I am prepared as usual. I could do we could do this for 3 hours because of the relationship that you and I have built since you came into this great community. And I can tell you there are certain people, don't tell any other members this, Glenn.
I won't.
There are certain people that when you have a consult with them, that you immediately hit it off with. And you're like, this guy is someone that knows what he's doing, keeps it light, keeps it fun, and just immediately we clicked. And I'm so thankful that happened and that you chose this community. I knew that once you met me that there was no way that you weren't going to join.
Well, I contemplated for many, many weeks after I met you because I was really nervous about you just in general. You know what I mean? So I did a background check. They came out bad. So it's a lot going on there. But, last night I was texting with Ken Corsini, who's the gentleman that introduced me to CG, and I actually haven't seen him. I said, it's funny, my memory popped up of you and I at CG like 5+ years ago, or 5 or 6, whatever it was. I said, yeah. I've not seen you since. And we text every once in a while and chat once in a while. He said, hey, you're still in CG? And I said, actually, I've formed some very good friendships with Leon and with Jason. I said, our kids are the same age. We live in the same neighborhood now. So yeah, I said, it's become part of my life, and it's become part of the peer group that I've chosen to be a part of. So yeah, no, it's been besides all your little cute comments this morning, which I'm remembering, by the way. I have a lot of value in our friendship for sure.
You like tall investors, and Ken there's only a few people that are taller than me in this community. Ken was one of them. Seems to be a theme developing there. You like hanging around tall people.
Well, yeah, it's funny. We're the first CG we were ever at. Ken, as you know, is probably like, what is he, 6'7", 6'6"? He's a tall dude, right? Yeah. And he's standing there, and he was our ambassador. And I'm there with Amber, my wife, and Amber is short. She's 5'2" or something like that. And she looks over, and his fly is wide open. She goes, I don't know how to tell him. So I said, hey, your barn door's open, man. So guys, I tell him, she was like, I know what to say. My face was right there. I said, all right, easy. Simmer down, okay? Just take it easy. So that was my first CG.
Well, you've been in this community 5 years now, I want to say.
Yeah, 5+, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's at least 5. I remember our first conversation like it was yesterday.
Me too.
Obviously, a lot has changed in those 5 years. And, I want this podcast for the Collective Genius, for our membership base. We've got 450 members plus now, members across the country. And a lot of real estate investors are very interested in how someone that is at the level that you're at, how did you get there? The evolution of a real estate investor, that journey, and everyone's journey is a little different. And I'm excited as we get into 2025 here and beyond to continue to do these on a weekly basis, these weekly conversations with members. Not only because I think there's a lot of value that we can give to the masses, but I also believe that it's something that like we can. I mean, this is fun for me. I get to know more things. I know that I will learn something new about you today that will help benefit others as well. So if we're going to start with the journey, let me ask you. I don't think I've ever asked you this question.
Okay.
What did you really truly want to be when you were in school? Like all of us had, I want to be a baseball player. I want to be a football player, basketball player, and then maybe this as well. What was yours?
Business owner. No kidding. My older brother was a business owner. He had small businesses that he had a home wiring business back when you used to have phone lines were wired. Don't start with the old jokes. You had those too. So he had a home wiring business that he worked in the summer, and I used to fly out my summers to Colorado and work with him. So I did that in my junior year, and then my junior to senior year, I went out there to Colorado too. I had to escape a bad girlfriend situation. She dumped me and broke my heart. Whatever. Long story short, it's I ended up leaving the area for a bit. Thank God there was no social media back then, so you could truly disconnect. So anyways, I was out there and I used to install prison alarm systems. When I was 17 years old, I was running wires and putting in prison control systems. That's what I was doing at
penitentiaries.
Like penitentiaries. It's school fire alarm systems and prison lock control systems, like all lock control, CCTV camera, all that kind of stuff. That's what I used to wire with my brother. And I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. So I started making business cards up and when I was 17 in high school to have my own home wiring business. It never took off, but that was my plan. It was to have a house with a helicopter pad and all that I remember sitting around my buddy talking about what that life would look like. We're going to put together kit Lamborghinis. And I just remember having those conversations. And so I haven't talked about that for, gosh, I don't know if ever, but it's been a long time. But that was what I wanted to do as a kid. I just knew I wanted to control my own future. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I grew up in a real hardworking, my dad was a butcher and he had a side business. We used to, here's something people don't know about me, but we used to skin and butcher probably 60 deer a year in our garage in upstate New York. People think, oh, you're from New York, you're a big city boy. I'm like, city boy? Dude, I had cows in my backyard. Literally, they'd break through the electric fence sometimes and come up to my window when I was a kid at night. So yeah, no. But so we did that. So I saw my dad work really, really hard. I didn't know what a real business owner was, though. Like I thought a business owner meant you did the work yourself. You were the technician. If you follow, oh my gosh, what's the book now? It starts escaping me. No, I can't think of the name. But anyways,
Fraction?
no. My gosh, I talk about it all. The E-Myth, the book, The E-Myth.
Yes.
Yeah, you talk about the technician business owner, and that's what
Pie maker.
What's that?
The pie maker. That's one of the stories in the E-Myth.
Yes. And so I didn't know what a business owner really was. And honestly, I don't think I did until I came to CG. Like I didn't know that I did. I kind of was trying to hire people to run things for me, but I had no idea what could happen. Because when we started investing in real estate back in 2003, honestly, it was really just people flipping houses. We're the first ones I ever knew that had an office. Like in our area, we took this really junky place and turned it into an office. And we're the first ones building a staff, but I never went to college. I didn't know. I literally think I was 69th in a class of 69 people when I graduated. I really think I was at the last.
I doubt that.
No, I was not a good student. I was a horrible student. I was too busy goofing off and looking for girls and everything else.
That, I believe. That.
I could have put my mind to it. I just didn't. School bored me. I didn't like it. So it was more of a social club for me.
I think if you look at most entrepreneurs, most weren't probably great students because they bored and wanting to create. So I know that you didn't go right into real estate. What was the journey before, and when did you know, all right, real estate is my bag. That's what I'm getting after that.
All right, let's dive in then. So when I was 19, I opened my first company. I went to work. I left high school and went down to work with my brother. I was supposed to go in the Air Force, actually. I was in pre-registered for the Air Force, and I was supposed to go in under what's called delayed enlistment. And while I was there, the company I work for, they liked me. I had a knack for fixing problems in jails, like in these kind of complex wiring scenarios. My brain, for some reason, could fix these. If they say, hey, we have a problem, let's put Glenn on it. I was 18, and I just had a knack because I had done it in my summers. So they decided to hire a lawyer and get me out of the Air Force. So they did. They hired a lawyer. They got me out of the Air Force. And yeah, this is something I've never
heard that
discussed.
before.
What's that?
I've never heard anyone say that they had a company hire an attorney to get
Yeah.
out of their agreement with the government.
Yeah. And I remember I was 18. They called and said, you're going to be AWOL. I'm like, I'll talk to my attorney. I didn't know much about that stuff back then. But anyway, so I went work with that company for just a short period of time. And then I opened my own company that was installing alarm systems. I knew how to do that. So I was doing just labor for another company. Well, the company I worked for, my brother was my boss. And they were on to me because I was doing it during work hours, right? I had the company truck and I was doing stuff. I was doing the job site management and I was going back. So I was 19. I was 19 and I started my own company, and they sent my brother from Richmond down to Roanoke, a 3-hour drive. And they said, you got to fire your brother. And so so here's the funny part. He comes in and I knew, he said, hey, you in town? And I go, uh-huh. He goes, so am I. We got to meet. And I go, yeah. And so, you know your brother, right? You know something's up. So we go to dinner, and I had full intentions when I saw him next to ask him to be the best man at my wedding. So I thought, well, here we go. So we sat down, and I wasn't a big drinker, but I remember saying, give me a shot of wild turkey and a beer, and he'll have the same. And they give it to my brother. And bars weren't so big about carding you back then, right? So we did our deal. We did our shot, and Gary said, I got to let you go. I said, well, I'd like you to be the best man at my wedding. He went, you a-hole. Really? I'm like, yeah. So thus began the journey of me going on to become an entrepreneur. So I opened my own alarm company at 19. I did a deal where I made a $7,000 profit. This is back in 89, 88, 89. And you were about 1, right? So I'm
older than I look. You know that.
That was a compliment, kind of backhanded compliment.
I just complimented myself.
I know, I heard you. I just skipped right over it. So I made $7,000 profit on a deal, and I thought I was rich. I mean, I thought I just made $7,000 profit on a camera deal. Well, life is perfect.
In the 80s, $7,000, especially you were, what'd you say, 19, 20 years old?
19, yeah. Yep.
$7,000. I mean, you could have bought a house.
I was so like, wow, this is great. So what I did was I reinvested it all back into a marketing campaign, hired a marketing company, hired a guy that made a flyer, and he put this flyer out all over. We sent out like 10,000 copies around Roanoke, Virginia. And you know how many phone calls I got?
Oh, none.
0. Not even one phone call. It was the worst experience. So we ended up going back to New York, crawling back there. I would move back in with my parents. I kept the business going, and I kept it growing. And I ended up selling that when I was in my 30s. And but here's, you should know this too. Around 19, I bought my first 2 rental properties. So I used to watch the late night TV shows all the time, and I bought 2 rental properties with what's called the simple assumption. Remember those deals at all?
Yeah. So what was the first, like the late night? Was it Carlton Sheets? Who?
Yeah,
Was it?
Carlton Sheets was one. I think that Russ Whitney was from my area. He was from Troy, New York. So that was the cities that I was from. So I remember seeing him. And I actually, you know who it was? You know who the first book that I had? I actually am friends with him now.
I know who you're going to say. Go ahead.
Nothing down for the 80s, nothing down for the 90s. Like, oh my gosh, I got a picture of him right in my. Say again?
Ron LeGrand.
No, not Ron LeGrand. Although I remember Ron LeGrand, It was Robert Allen.
Okay.
Robert Allen, and I read those books. And it was and the one that I bought on TV was Dave Deldado. Remember that name?
That one I don't.
He had a late night TV. I called up to spend $300 on TV, and I ended up upgrading to $600 for a coaching session. He talked me into it, and I was going to do it. So I bought 2 houses, and I collected rent for about 6 months and didn't pay a single mortgage. And I lost them both to foreclosure. I ended up going bankrupt 3 times, and I was 20 years old, 21. I was just a hot mess. I could make money. I just didn't know what to do with it. So
let's stop here for the audience, like twofold here. Number one, to give some clarity, if you're not in, probably past 35, if you're younger than that, there used to be infomercials that would run right before television stations would go off the air, and it would just be static. If you were lucky enough to have cable back then.
Yeah.
And they would run these infomercials like you may see some of those still with the products, the Ron Pills and the George Foreman type grills and things like that. You may see those still, but they actually did that for real estate back then because there was no YouTube, there was no social media.
No.
And those were cheap times. And so they would run these spots, and people that were getting home and were exhausted from work would watch these things and go, oh my gosh, I've got an opportunity to invest. But I also want to point out here the second part of that, because, I think everybody sees, Collective Genius members or real estate investors in their area that they go, man, that person's just, they've done this for a very long time and they've just figured it out. They're so lucky. They're so lucky. Ha! What you just said, your first 2 deals, you bought, you watched these infomercials and you lost them. And here you are today, right, where you've come, and we'll get there. But I want to point that out because, a lot of people, especially today, I'll hear, oh man, I got the bug because I got this $20,000 deal and on my first deal.
Yeah.
And it's not common. Most people that have been in this business 10 plus years started just like what you were just saying, took action, failed, and said, well, I failed on this, but I'm not going to stop.
Yeah. So that's what we did. And I did not know Amber back then. Amber and I are 50-50 partners in this thing. We were a husband and wife team, and I had lost those 2. Then I kind of put my tail between my legs, to be honest with you. And I helped a lot of my friends because I studied real estate. I read all the books, and I'm not one to not take action, obviously, but I didn't for probably a decade because I was like, just kind of, I had been burned, like shoving your hand in hot coals. I'm like, I'm not going to do that again. That was a rough experience for me. So I kept my other business going and got that running, and struggled a lot. Again, I look back, sometimes people have said, do you regret not going to college? And I did take 1 semester in college and I nailed it. It was a business class and I got a 4.0 in this one, but I'm thinking, I was 29 years old when I went to college. I feel like an old man there. And I'm like, I don't know, this just isn't really for me. So
I had to think that at 29, you thought you were old, but if you were in the, you were probably in there with a bunch of 18 to
I was. So it was, I do wish that I had, I never had a mentor that they would have taught me the fundamentals of running a business as opposed to doing work and getting paid for it. Because, when you're flipping houses, that kind of stuff, if you're doing it yourself, that's what you're doing, right? You're doing work, you're getting paid. If you stop working,
you're in it.
You're in the business all the time. So as we kind of fast forward past a bunch of years there, I finally dipped my toe in the water. Amber and I had met through an online, not a dating site, we're through a network marketing company, which I did for 10 years. And I met her middle of the night, one night, one of my downline found her online and we got talking to a conversation that one led another. We were friends for 2.5 years before anything ever happened. And we had decided at some point to buy a rental property together in New York. And I wanted to buy something so bad that I bought the first thing I could talk a guy into to do owner financing and assuming a mortgage and all that kind of stuff. And it wound up being the worst. I still own it, which is actually, it's worked out. But at the time, right. Time fixes everything in real estate. Yeah.
It does.
It was a 2-family that was on a busy road next to a bar called the Bad Pig. It was owned by a cop who was fired. That they called him that was called the Bad. It was a Harley gang biker bar. So that's right next door. Oh yeah. Right across the street was a chemical plant. So busy road, chemical plant. Right behind it was a dump. Right next to the Bad Pig was a railroad track because I had to bring the chemicals in. So every possible bad thing you could have. And about 6 months after we owned it, the neighbors told us that an 18-year-old boy hung himself in the garage. Great. So we had every bad thing.
And you said, I'll take it.
I know. And we negotiated the deal. We took it. And Amber, when she finally came to New York, she was in Texas at the time. She's like, this is it, huh? And one of my best friends was a contractor. Said, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. But I had worked the numbers out, so I wanted to do it. Now, it took years for it to become profitable because it finally became worth more money. We had to put a lot more money into it. But it was just a cob together house, and that was our first experience in a rental. So that was that.
Continue at that point. Now you've got one. Is this now? I'm going to go full time into flipping. Where did that come from?
That started around 2007. So I'm getting divorced at that time. Turns out Amber's getting divorced. She needs a place to stay. So she comes up to New York at a friend of mine, stays at his house. One leads to another. We kind of start getting involved because we're both going through divorces. And we're like, well, she's like, I want you to stay here for a little while. I go, yeah, I understand. And we were good business partners before that in the network marketing business. And we both going through divorces, I have to make a large chunk of money legally. How can I do this legally, right? I'm not going to go out and sell crack. I got to figure out some way to make money. And again, I resorted to watching the flipping shows, right? I started watching the flipping shows again. And I'm like, God, I'm not an idiot. We could probably muster this up and figure out how to flip a house. And Amber wanted to flip and I wanted to hold. Like I wanted to buy rentals and she wanted to flip. She always said she likes taking things that are ugly and make them look pretty. Let me just insert the joke for you right there. I know I'm a work in progress for her. I just took it out of your...
That's the best way for this relationship. Yes, we'll get out in front of things.
Get right out there. So, yeah, so we decided, we went to a local seminar. This is kind of a funny story. We go to a local seminar with 8 people. And it's an evening, and we're 2 of the 8 people. And it's a flipping course. It's a thing called the Knowledge Network. It was put on. And so a guy is up there speaking. He was very annoying. He kept sucking his water. He was an awkward guy. And he's talking about how he's flipped all these houses and this and that and how successful he is. And he looks at Amber, who we're in the front row. It's date night. So she's all decked out, like looking pretty. And he looks at her and goes, to be successful in real estate, you're going to have to go in houses that she'll never go in. And he points at Amber. Oh. Now, we've never done a deal yet. And all I thought was, brother, you've got no freaking idea who you're talking to. But okay. You feel big in front of the room of 8 people, just keep it up. Just do your thing. Well, we led from there and drove down to see a woman named Robin Thompson who had done 250 flips in Connecticut. This has been 2007. And I'm like, 250 flips? That's ridiculous. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. I couldn't even register that. I hadn't done one yet. We had that one rental is all we had. And we came back and decided to start. We spent $1,000 on some form she had or something, And we went ahead and started our journey. I came back, bought a house. We figured it out. We're working our way through it. It was literal blood, sweat, tears. Did all the work ourselves. We're not thinking like business owners, just thinking like making money. We flipped that house. It made $17,000. And I remember thinking, okay, it's not a ton of money. It's not a little bit of money, but it shows me it's possible. And then went from there and we flipped another one the next year, that was in 2008 when we sold it. So I think we did 1 the first year, 3 the next year. I think we did 7 the next year. Then we did 20 the next year. And this is all renovations. We didn't, wholesaling wasn't a thing back then. That was just not a thing.
No. And in fact, I joined this group in 2015. It wasn't a term that was used. Maybe people were doing assignments, but it wasn't a term. Most people in this group were flippers. That's when I met personally Ken, the first time when I first joined this group. So were you subsidizing out of the gates? I mean, a lot of people listening to this are either full-time investors or considering to go full-time. Were you guys subsidizing outside of the business as you were getting to start? Like somebody had a part-time job or something along those lines? Or you were all in?
We went all in. We shoved I had some income from my network marketing business, was maybe a couple $1,000 a month. And if you don't work those businesses, they dwindle away fast. And so that was dwindling fast. Lived on some home equity, lived on credit cards. And no, we were all in. We were all in. So once we went, we said, okay, we made money here. That got us for another few months at $17,000. I think our expenses were probably $4,000 a month. Too long for those days. So,
more.
We had time to do that, and then we had money to survive there. Then we got the next flip going, got that going, started making $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 on deals, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, okay, this I could do this. So that kind of turned it into a business.
Where you said, I can do this. This is our life. This is our business.
I think we did after the very first one. I think what we were doing. I think the one that really was a game changer was the first deal we made $17,000. The next deal was the condo that we lived in. So we were kind of flipped that. We which is not easy to do when you're both going through divorces and the tensions are high. And, Amber and I, we both have very strong personalities. She's an amazing partner, but we have very strong personalities. And so we had to work our way through that. But that wasn't a moneymaker. But the next one that we did all the work ourselves for 30 days and did a complete renovation on the house. Nothing major. We didn't do roof work or anything like that. We did all the work ourselves in the house and made like 36 grand in 31 days or something, or 33 days, something like that. And we sold it right away on the first thing. And this is back in 2008. Everybody's saying, the world's coming to an end. Nobody's buying houses. It's a terrible time. And everybody kept saying you should get out of real estate. And I just didn't listen. I was already committed. I didn't listen. I think it's an important lesson for anybody, is that don't listen to everybody else. I don't even care if they're professionals. I don't even care if they're guys that come to CG and say, well, I know what's going to happen. Well, no, you don't. None of us know. And everybody, even my investors say, what are you going to do now? I go, I'm not going to change my plan just because I think something might happen. I'm going to keep doing it and I'll adjust as needed if I need to. Yeah. And so I didn't need to, because I kept just, pushing forward. So yeah. So I think that one that we made 30 grand, that was kind of an eye opener. We said, wow, that's enough money for us to live for a year at the time, or pretty close. Right. And we said, we could do this. And we started doing more. And then we opened up an office, and we hired an assistant who used to come right to our condo. Our assistant would come to our condo 10 to 2 every day. Sometimes I was just getting out of bed. She'd get up. I'm a night person, not a morning person. She'd be like, good morning, Susan. Well, good morning. And she'd be at our kitchen table. I'd come out. It was just still a 2-bedroom condo. That's how we ran our company for a couple of years, so.
You are someone that, and we'll talk about this more, but you have an education business as well. But I was going to ask you, do you, we'll get more into the education piece, but do you teach what you just said, meaning that you set a goal, you had committed to this, and here we are, 2008, you're going through there's a ton here that would say, do something else.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of, like, if I'm talking to somebody that's just now getting started, they've got all these challenges, is this something that, you share with a lot of your students?
I do. Yeah, we're very open with everybody about the struggles and the trials and tribulations. And I always say, this is not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. I make them say that over and over again, because I say, listen, if you leave here and you say to yourself, well, Glenn says it's going to be easy. I said, you weren't listening, because it's not going to be easy, because anything in life worth anything was never easy to achieve, ever. I've never seen anybody, and you might win the lottery, but most of those people lose it right away because they have no idea. They didn't build it, so they don't understand. It's really, when you're young, you read things like, it's not about becoming a millionaire. It's about the person you become because of that process. And you think to yourself, bullshit. But it's not, but it's true. It's the person that you become. You could strip everything away from me tomorrow, which as entrepreneurs, sometimes you feel like that's going to happen, right? Sometimes you feel like it's just going to happen. But then I know, because of what's in me, I get right back up and figure it out again. Because now I know, and I get there that much faster the second time. Yeah. So yeah, we tell everybody how hard it is and how it's, are some days easy? Yeah. Are some days, are you celebrating? Yeah. A lot of days you're struggling. One of my closest friends in New York, I finally talked him out of leaving his corporate job, 6-figure corporate job as a VP of a credit union. And it was one that I borrowed millions from, so I really didn't like him leaving there. But nonetheless, he left there, but it's okay. He left there, and he's now a full-time flipper. I think he's done 6 or 8 deals this year. And he calls me some days like freaking out. I'm like, welcome to the entrepreneur journey, buddy. This is how it goes. Like, this is how it goes, just so you know. He's like, I don't have a check coming. I go, and again, welcome to the entrepreneur journey. I said, so this is how you want your freedom. There's a cost for it. So,
and this is why, those that jump into this, I always tell people the biggest difference between those that are at the entry level and those that are at our highest levels within our community, it's just time and execution. Really, it's people that say, I'm just going to continue. Over time, I'll look up and I'll have issues along the way, but I solve those issues and I continue to grow and scale. That's what people come to us for. They want to scale. And so hearing those type of lessons, our room is full of that. That's who you want to be around, of the people that shorten that learning curve. Speaking of learning curve, give me your biggest lesson, like the thing that speaks, like I'm sure you have a ton, but the one that was just the most impactful for you, the biggest lesson you learned along the way of that journey?
There's a lot there. I would say if I would summarize it, it's like the Rocky movie. Just he says, listen, this isn't about how many times you get knocked down. So how many times you get knocked down and get back up. You've got to get back up. Because I was going to say, one of the ingredients that people fail to talk about all the time is failure. Failure is an enormous ingredient in success. It's more than the success itself. You're going to fail way more than you succeed. But it just takes one or two hits that change the game. And I think that people just forget that you're going to have to fail. No one wants to hear that. Like a good motivational speaker probably won't say that. Well, don't tell them that. They'll leave the room. But it's the truth. Yeah. The only way you're going to get to where you are is fail. So I'd say that, I play that clip from Rocky Balboa, the final Rocky movie there. And just a huge Rocky fan, of course, love the underdog. But, when he's talking to his son and he says, it ain't about how hard you get hit. It's about how many times you get hit and you keep going. That's how winning is done. And I think that's the lesson that I take with me every single day, because I've had the shit kicked out of me. I still do. I still have moments where things are not going right. This year in the education business has been a particularly very difficult year for us. And so I'm getting knocked down, and I just look in the mirror and say, who are you? Who do you want to be? And if you stop, who will you be? If I stop, I'm a quitter, and I'm teaching my kids to quit, and I'm teaching my wife that I'm not going to push through and I'm not going to go. And, I just think you just have to push, and you have to get through that failure. If you don't get through the failure, what's going to happen? What's the alternative? If you say to yourself, oh, this is too hard. Okay. What's the alternative?
Yeah. Great word there. That gives me a good transition to your education business. I have been in the room, for the last 10 years associated with Collective Genius, but the last 6+ years, I can't tell you how many people that we've talked out of going the education route. It's a distraction for most. I have seen people invest 7 figures only to go, you know what, I thought that was a passion for me, but it's not something that I want to do. You're one of the rare people that I know that has been able to keep your Albany-based flipping business succeeding and also growing. Obviously you've had some trials and tribulations this year, and we've talked about those, but you're one of the rare people that I know that has, a model where it fluctuates, but is almost a 50-50 revenue model from our previous conversation. You're one of the rare people. Why do you think you've succeeded at that where other people have failed to do both?
I think that for me, when I was in network marketing, I got to a place where they would fly me around to speak and train. And I actually learned really quickly that I love to help other people. I'm not necessarily love in the like hands-on, let's make phone calls together. I'm not necessarily there, but what I like to do is inspire people and educate them and get them going in the right direction. And I have a gift for it. I like to do it. It's my passion. I know that because even this weekend, I was at a party with a bunch of 4th grade parents that I just been meeting, great people from our school. And one of the coaches, they kind of approached my wife and they got talking about business, how they're struggling. And she said, hold on, Glenn, come here. She called over and said, you got to talk to him. And I jumped right into fix it mode. I'm like, okay, talk to me. Let me see your numbers. What are you doing? And this is a guy that does a reptile business, nothing to do with real estate. He goes around and shows reptiles at schools and stuff. And his dad started the business, and they're struggling because he's the artist and he won't get out of his own way. And the wife's trying to run things, So I'm hearing all these pieces, and I'm like 35 years of experience in business. I'm like, I'm picking apart. I saw her again this morning. I said, don't forget my offer. I'm willing to help you. I go, no charge. I'd love to help you. She goes, yeah, we'll go out and get advertisers or something together. I said, love to do it. Now, whether they take me up, I don't know. But I came home that night and said to Amber, I said, that's how I know I love helping other people, because that gives me energy. Like, that's what gives me massive energy. Even my flipping business, what gives me energy is building my team now. It's not flipping houses. We do 100 deals a year. I don't see any of them. I live in Florida, 1,000 miles away. It runs on its own up in New York. I have, meetings once a week and an occasional phone call. And now my team is part of CG as well. But I think that's what drives me. So I think that to answer your original question, I think that I have a real passion for it. I don't have a passion just for the money in it. And I think so many people see it as a money grab. Oh, I'm going to go out there and get a money grab. I'm like, you have no freaking idea if you think the education, because education done right is not it's not the money grab you think it is. I'll put it that way. You could make money, but it's not the money you think it is. Now, if you do it right.
I think that's what I was looking for right there. Is truly the passion of helping people. And that will ultimately lead to success, especially with your attitude of knock down, get right back up. Because I know even if revenue isn't where you want it to be on that side, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Number one, because you have a passion for it. Number two, you just won't. You'll solve any issues that you're having. So you mentioned, and I was getting to that next. So you're one of the rare investors in this group that has an education business, a flipping business, and you are remote. You live in the same area as me, Tampa Bay area. And that wasn't the case when we first met. You were based in Albany. And I think you had snow behind you when we first met.
Yeah.
And I know that you had said, and then we've heard this from many members, I'm moving to Florida. I'm moving to California. I'm moving to all these places. I'm going to work remotely and my team's going to take over. But again, you're one of those rare people that have been able to pull that off. You mentioned building up your team. Give us a little bit. How have you been able to still continue to have success outside of the one meeting a week and check-ins when needed? What do you think the secret has been for you guys in your business of running that business remotely?
Well, let's discuss success, because that's a very loaded word, because I think there's different ways that people view success. And I will tell you that it took me 2 years of 6-figure losses to figure it out. This is the first year we've turned a profit, and next year we'll be back in the 7-figure range. And it took a long time and getting the crap kicked out of us. So we moved here during COVID, and COVID, I lived in New York State under Lord Cuomo, I called him, and the self-proclaimed COVID Lord out there. And he shut everything down. It made it really difficult. My kids were, my poor son, my little guy he did kindergarten, homeschool. How do you do kindergarten, homeschool, right? Not homeschool, but from Zoom, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then they're going to do it again the next year. I'm like, screw this, we're out of here. So we'd always thought to move to Florida. I was actually at a Sharper event with Gary and Susan, and I was in Florida, and we'd been looking at houses for 4 or 5 years. Like, I don't know if I don't want to buy a house, but I can't afford that down there. It's too much money. And, I'm not going to have 2 houses. How am I going to do that? I have kids and all this stuff. And we end up coming down here. We end up finding the house, mortgage rates. I call my mortgage broker and say, how much would the payments be on this house? And I'm like, what? He's like, Glenn, rates are 2.7%. I'm like, what? So one led to another, and we ended up buying the house, and we made a decision. Talked to my whole family, moved everybody down here, and everything was good. My education business was screaming virtually. It was doing great, and everything was going great there. The flipping business was doing good. And I had a guy who I thought would be good. And I came down here, and shortly thereafter realized that he was not good, and that things were going south, and we started to lose, tens of thousands on a month, and 1 month lost 6 figures. I'm like, whoa. But now I'm committed. Now I live here. This is my home. So now I'm in trouble. And so I had to really sit back, and while everybody at CG was like, oh, I'm killing it. I wasn't killing it. And I just I didn't try to cry about it much, but it's disheartening when you're in a room full of people, and maybe not everybody's killing it like they say they're killing it, but nonetheless, people are profitable, and I'm not. And I'm thinking, I'm older than these guys. I should know better, and I'm not. So it screws with your head. And so I looked back and said, okay, let's dig in. So I had him. I ended up letting him go. Here's the funny part. He wanted me to let go of the person who now is my director. So he called me one day and said, I'm going to let Meg go. And I said, why? And he said, well, she's not cutting it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, really? And I had brought her in through my education business. She had been with me. She's been with me 7 years now. So that was she'd been with me for 4 years at that point. And I said, if anyone's going to let her go, I'm going to, because I brought her in and I have a relationship with her. I'd like her to know that, I'm here. So I was going to put her in my brokerage. We own a brokerage too. So I said, I called her and said, Meg, I'm going to put you in the brokerage. We're going to take you out of Signature Home Buyers. We're going to let you go from that company. And she said, yeah, I don't accept that. And I said,
what a great answer.
She goes, you're being fed misinformation. She goes, you don't know what's going on up here. So that led to going out and hiring another COO.
I did not know that.
Yes. I went out to hire another COO to come run the company.
I didn't know that she had challenged you. I mean, think about.
Oh, she told me she's not going to quit. She said, I don't care if you fire me, I'm not leaving.
Wow.
And I said,
now I got something, right? I can plug into that. That is fire. I love it.
Oh, yeah. And I remember where I was at my studio down here in my education. We have an office here in Florida. I was looking at her through Zoom going, huh? Okay. So I had to hear her out. Hired another guy for a year. He was not from the industry. I thought he might be good to come in. He was no good. He was virtual from Connecticut. He was no good. Nice guy. Well, not even that nice of a guy. Well, nice to me during the interview process. And then to the team, not so good. Not a good culture fit. So I lose money again that year. So then I go another year and I have two people in the company that I pit against each other, so to speak. I said, I'm going to have you guys sort of run side by side. And in my mind, I said, let's see who stands out. Maybe one will stand out. Well, sure enough, Meg stood out. Like, hands down, she was the winner. So after a year, I called her and said, Meg, I'm going to promote you to director of operations. She said, what will I be doing? And I listed off all these things. She said, so pretty much what I do now. I go, exactly. And so she has been an unbelievably strong leader that I keep pouring into now, investing in coaches in her, investing in leadership coaches in her, and helping her grow. And that gives me a ton of energy because I'm watching her start to grow. I was at her wedding this past year, and her dad stood up, and her now husband is our top acquisitions guy. So it's a family business on that end too. And Meg's been now with business for 7 years. And she said, the dad said, these two are going to do something great together. They're going to be amazing together. He looked over at me and pointed, and I said, mm-hmm. And I was proud, like almost a proud papa. She's not my daughter, but I felt like a proud papa because she's in her 30s. I'm in my 50s. So it's nice to, I'm grooming her. And I've been having conversations about, possible ownership down the road and some equity, and I've been talking about some growth. So it's been fun. And this year, we're finally going to turn a 6-figure profit this year. It's been a real struggle. And I got to tell you, my business coach told me 2 years ago to shut it down. So I guess a lesson for everybody is you got to listen to your heart in those situations. Take advice, but then internalize that advice and decide what's right for you. Because at one point, he was right at my kitchen table. The whole team here, he said, you got to shut this down. Because we had lost $300,000 that year or something. And I'm like, shut it down. Yeah. I couldn't even imagine my life without it. And so I just never, ever gave up. So going back to your first question, what's the lesson I learned? Maybe I'm too stupid to quit. I don't know what it is. I just don't know. I don't know how to fail. As long as it takes me, I don't know how, I figure my life's going to go anyways. I'll just keep pushing.
There was so much good in that, Glenn. Your ability to invest in people. I think that when I talk to most, especially early on real estate investors, it's very transactional for employees. You saw something there. She saw something in your leadership to cause her to say, no, I am not leaving this because I see potential in this as well. There's so many good things there. And I think the original question was about how are you having success remotely? And, you gave the formula right there is, number one, you were very upfront about losing and having to figure it out. And now you've got it figured out after trial and error and continuing and losing a bunch of money to get to that point where you figured it out with the right person. That's the biggest lesson and biggest takeaway.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I do want to follow up one thing, because I think that the struggles are just not talked about enough in this industry. People get embarrassed. I think that's something that we do a pretty good job in our community is, yes, I want to hear about the good, but some of the best track presentations are about the bad of how you did something, went down the wrong path and corrected it. How are you losing in those couple of years? How are you losing so much money? Is it just you're putting a lot of, is it marketing? Is it people? How are you losing so much money in an operation that now has turned around the corner?
So I have learned through CG and through my relationships in CG, I have learned what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I am not a good operator. I'm a horrible operator. I'm a good leader. Oh, I don't know about good leader. I guess you have to ask my team for that. But a good starter, let's say, and a good direction provider and a good motivator, all that kind of stuff. I'm really good at the vision. I'm good at driving when I'm good at ideas and innovating. I'm really good at that. I'm not good at the day-to-day operations, so I'm not good at looking at details. And so what was happening is people were trying to spend their way out of it, overspend on marketing, overspend on people. And you have these leaky buckets in every area of your business. You're overpaying commissions. Your people are bloated salaries. You're spending too much on marketing that's not being dialed in. No one's watching the numbers, right? I remember early on in my career with my first company, I took a guy out to lunch who came from nothing. They lived in a shack in our town, and he turned that into 7 like little gas station grocery stores. It was, back then it was kind of a big deal. He came from nothing and built this little empire for himself. And I said, what's a lesson you could teach me? I was probably in my late 20s. And he said, I'll tell you what my first mentor told me. He said, if you watch the pennies, the dollars will watch themselves. I have never been good at watching pennies. I'm just not a penny watcher. So I've had to learn that I have to use the book Who Not How, and I have to find people that are better at managing the pennies than I am. But the pennies aren't just money. The pennies are all those spots in your business that leak money that you don't see. It's very difficult and sometimes for me to read a P&L or a balance sheet and go, oh yeah, here's the problem. I don't know. Sometimes when you start getting the millions of dollars in your business, $10,000 looks like nothing. Now, when you make 50 grand a year and you lose 10 grand, well, oh my God, that's a big thing. But when you're pumping through $7-8 million of the business to lose a few $100,000, I know it sounds maybe insane if you're not at that level, but it can disappear. 10 grand disappears like nothing in a business. 50 grand. I remember we had some $50,000 errors. There was one $50,000 error, not some. We had one $50,000 error. It went unnoticed for about 7 or 8 weeks till somebody caught it, because you're running money through it if you don't have good eyes on that. And I had an accountant who was an alcoholic. Didn't know that. We had to fire her. That was part of the hell of being down here, that she was an alcoholic. She was a hot mess. I'm not an accountant. I hired her with an outside company. She was with me for 7 years. How was I to know until I finally called Meg one day and said, what is going on up there in New York? Will you go find her? They found her in her car drinking vodka at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. And I finally had to fire her because we had problem after problem. There was many problems led up to that, but I knew something was up. So you start putting all of these pieces together, and it's an equation for disaster. It's a recipe for disaster. And that's what happened to me, not being able there. Even if I was there, I would have managed it better, but it's difficult when you live in a different spot. Now, I was forced to be remote because I made that decision. 1,000 miles away, I can't just suddenly pop back home. So I was forced to see it through. And now with the help of, our coach who we have come in all the time, which we met through CG, Amanda, she's been Meg's personal coach. We have Annie Atch is also, I'm helping have, she's also coaching Meg. So we have some great people that I've met through this network that are helping coach her. And now she's running things. Here's the best example I can tell you of Meg's and my relationship now. I call with a crazy idea because I'm an idea man, and I'll leave her a message. About 3 or 4 months ago, I said, Meg, I got this idea. We should do so and so and so and so and so and so. And she sends back a text, go take a nap. I must not laugh and I go, I love you because you're right. I'll shut up. It's like, she's like,
That is great.
I got stuff to do, baby. Get out of my way. I got stuff to do. So I think that's, I don't know if I helped answer the question or not, because there's a lot that we could spend days unpacking all this stuff, but you've got to decide what you want, and you have to decide never to quit. You have to decide to never quit, no matter how hard it gets, and you're going to want to, and you're going to think about it, and you're going to think about, does this make sense for me? Why am I doing this? This just doesn't make sense. Maybe I should quit. Maybe I should get a job. You're going to tell yourself all these stories, but deep in your heart, you have to decide, am I going to never quit? Because if you make that decision and set your standard for that, you just won't. You want to, but you won't.
Give me the relationship or the takeaway since you've joined? I know you just mentioned a bunch of people, relationships that you have. Is there one thing that stands out to you since joining the Collective Genius that's taken, like you never forget about this particular moment or presentation? Is there something that you can share that this community has given you in your business?
I can't narrow it down to one presentation because I've seen so many, but I can't narrow it down to one relationship because I have so many. But what I can tell you is that I realize that I'm not a freak. And shut up, Leon. But I realize I'm not a freak because I realize that sucking as an operator is what good entrepreneurs do. They hire the right operator. And I just thought I was a failure. I just thought for years, I was like, God, you suck. Like, you suck, Glenn. What are you doing? Like, how come you didn't notice you lost 12 grand there? Why you lost 300 grand? What? Why do you suck so bad? And you start telling yourself what a failure until you realize that's not your skill set.
Yep.
When you get to a certain level, I can flip houses. Look, in the past 2 years, I could have went out and flipped houses alone and made way more money than I lost money running a business, right? So I could have done that, but my goal is to build a business that provides amazing lives for others. And so what I learned from the relationship with CG is that I'm not alone. I'm surrounded by other people who suck at operations too. They might look like they have it all put together. Like some people might look at me and go, he has it all put together. I'm like, shit, not even close. I just have other people that run day-to-day operations for me so that I can do this. My education business, we've had a major struggle this year. My mistake. I stepped in as an operator a year ago and said, let's change this. Stupid move. It was a bad move. And I've tried to work my way out of it all year. Finally, I had hired a marketing director, 6-figure salary, a year ago. And about a month ago, he said, hey, how about I just take over this part a little bit? I hear him being very nurturing in his conversation. I said, are you firing me? And he goes, Glenn, I need to fire you before you have to fire me. And I said,
wow.
Okay, man.
Wow. Dude, that's 2 people on your team.
Yeah. Two separate teams. Yes.
2 separate teams.
Yes.
What? I don't think I've ever heard this. I know I haven't heard this from you, Glenn, but I got a lot of people that I have relationships with in this group. I don't think I've ever heard executive or operational people being that confident to be able to speak. Why do you think that is?
I like to think that I foster a relationship of openness and honesty all the time. And I say, even if you screw up, you make a mistake, let's talk about it, let's be open. And I like to think that I'm easy to talk to and that I'm real and that I tell them if I'm afraid, I say it. Listen, guys, I'd be lying if I wasn't nervous where we are right now. Yep, us too. Well, let's do it together. We're in the foxhole together, boys. And I also will take time. There are moments that I'll take time to send a message to say, I just want you to know I believe in you. I want you to know that I believe in you. And I have 2 real key operators at my education business. So I've had those private messages with where I'll say, I know we've been together. I said, I feel like we're in the foxhole together right now. And you are my people. We're in the lifeboat together, right? We are the ones. And I've had the same conversation with Meg. Meg and I had it just so happened we were on the same flight coming down to a planning meeting we had here before, my family and I, and Amber says, why don't you guys sit together? I said, yeah. So we sat together and Meg and I talked the whole time and got to bond. And we dreamed together and we talked about the future together. And I dreamed about some goals I have of merging both companies and turning it into some bigger models. And so she's very excited about it. So I try to foster a relationship where they can be very open and direct with me and not have a fear of, well, I can't talk back to him. He's the boss. I don't ever want to be that guy. I want you to talk to me. I mean, don't call me up and call me an a-hole someday. That wouldn't go over well for you. But I mean, but if you're,
but challenge you at the same time.
Absolutely. I want to be the kind of boss. And if I firmly believe in something or it's the wrong decision, I will say it. I'm not a pushover. I will speak up, but I want you to, what's the point of empowering people if you take their power away from them? So I've done that. 5 years ago, I hired a woman to come in my company. At the time, she wanted 90 grand as a salary. And I'm like, holy crap, I can't afford that. But I figured out how to do it. She was a machine that I had no idea where to have my hands on. I had no idea. She wanted to run things, and all I kept doing was taking stuff away from her. And after 2 years or year and a half, she walked in one day and resigned and said, I'm just going to move on. And she was nice about it. But I look back now and say, I had somebody in my hands that wanted to be a leader, but my own ego wouldn't let me get out of the way and let her be a leader. So if you hire someone to be a leader, train them, coach them, give them time. It's not going to happen overnight. Watch carefully just to make sure that it's a culture fit, but then get out of the way. Like, seriously, go take a nap. Let them do what they're good at and go do what you're good at. Like, just inspire and be there. I heard Eric Brewer say this on stage, and I very much relate to him. For a while, you feel lost. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, I'm not contributing as many hours as I used to. I don't know what to do now. Like, I'm a little bit lost. But that's the game. Go out and start another business if you want to. Go do something else. But that's the game. You got to get the right people in place. And I go all the way back to the condo when Amber and I were starting in 2008 or 9. I remember sitting around this little glass table that we had. We could barely afford to pay attention, let alone pay our bills, right? It was a very difficult time. And didn't have any assets, didn't have all the rentals we have now and none of that stuff. So just that one junky one that I'm sure was not worth anything. But I look back and I remember saying to her, I don't want to have a massive company. I don't want to build a company of hundreds of people like that. I don't know how to do that. I don't have any interest. That feels like a big headache to me. What I want to do is have a company. Didn't realize it'd be 2 companies, but now maybe there'll be 1 eventually. But I just want to make a huge difference in a few people's lives. What I didn't realize was that to make a difference in a few people's lives, you got to make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And I'm good with that. So I'm learning my place, and CG has definitely helped me learn that that's okay. And I don't have to be all things to all people. I can just be good at what I'm good at and go find someone else to do the stuff that I'm not good at.
I was going to ask you your give for this show, but you just gave it. I think that as people are wanting to scale their businesses, the biggest thing you have to understand is that you have to hire great people and then get out of their way. You have to truly be a visionary. That if you find a great executive to run the operation, your job is to continue to throw great ideas on the wall. And their job is to say, now go take a nap and let me sort out what's on the wall that will make us the most amount of revenue with the least amount of effort and the least amount of time, right? That's what a great relationship between, a lot of people talk about rocket fuel, and they talk about the relationship between a CEO and a COO. That's it. That's the secret sauce, is training them up. And then as you make that transition, I've seen this time over time in this group, whereas you make that transition, you've got an executive running, you have to continue to train that individual, and you have to continue to feed them with ideas. And at the same time, when you have an executive like that, if you don't continue to grow the business, like in your particular case, you have the education piece and you have the flipping piece, like you have to continue to give new ideas to those executives so those businesses grow. If they just see you sitting on the couch eating bonbons, which I don't even know if that's even a product anymore, but that's a very 80s reference, they're going to leave you.
Yes.
Because you graduated to the owner's box, but you're not acting as an owner. You're acting as just someone that said, I've made it.
Right.
Because you've never make it in this business. As soon as you think you've made it, that's a great lesson. Because next year, if you just take your hands off the wheel, you can't just take your hands off the wheel. You have to have that executive that you're continuing to meet with, but also giving them the ability to grow, to do the job that you hired them for. All right, let's go rapid fire because we're.
Let me throw one more thing in. So one,
Please.
It's more than likely, at least in my case, it wasn't the first person that I had. I've been through, between the 2 companies, I would say 7 or 8, directors to come run things, COOs, whatever you want to call them. And it takes a while. Some people get lucky out of the gates and hit a home run. Good for you. Go play the lottery. Maybe you're lucky like that. I didn't have that, and I wasn't you. So be prepared to, get rid of them when if your heart starts telling you something's not quite right, it's time. Because you're going to get there eventually, just no matter how much money you want to lose before you get there. So I'd say make sure you keep that part in mind. That's going to be an important fact when you're out there looking for that person. And the next thing you do, communicate with them. When Meg was down here for CG, I said, we were in the car and I said, what can I do better? Because I'm trying to find out my new role as an owner. She says, no, you're great. I go, okay, so, but what am I not doing? Like, not what am I doing? Because what I'm doing seems to be okay. What am I not doing? She goes, you know what you're not doing? We'd like them to know who they work for a little more. We don't see you as much. Can you jump on a level 10? Just say hi. Just say good morning. Can you just pop out? Because remember, I live 1,000 miles away. Can you just do this? We'd like the owners, we'd like them to know who Amber and you are a little more. That's all. Just make sure you're around a little more. So communicate with them and let them tell you. But listen, when you ask a question, don't think you know everything, because you don't. You know enough to get you where you are. You have to hire people to get you where you want to go.
Well said. So and the last bit I'll say to that is that there are very few that get lucky with their first hire in that director of operations or COO role. A lot of people that have had success with it have groomed that person over the years and have seen the leadership that it takes to start growing into that leadership role. And obviously you help with that. But, if you want, this is our tribe, right? The Collective Genius is where we come to learn from others. But also, I can tell you, there's so many great COOs in the room. Like, if you're truly trying to understand the avatar, what that person looks like, sounds like, their experience, a community like ours is perfect for that, because there's so many these are people that could run their own business if they wanted to, but because they have great leaders that take care of them, it is their business. They treat it just like a business, and some of them at this point have been with those businesses for so long that they probably do have equity in one of or more of the businesses that owner, and they probably weren't when they first were brought in. So there's this has given me, from the community standpoint, all the questions I was going to ask you about the gives of the community, you answered them a lot in that CEO.
Leon, let me ask you this question, because I want to, if you don't mind, I want to ask you a question because you have a unique perspective, and I want to tell you mine on it. I think that one of the things that holds us back from finding great people is we're terrified they're going to come in and then we'll teach them everything, and they're going to start their own business. And I think that our own egos hold us back. What I had to learn is that there are a lot of people in the world that love being number two. They don't want the risk of number one. The number one, we take the risk as number one. They don't want it. If they wanted it, they would have started their own company. Now, will some people do it? Yeah. Will they be successful? Maybe not, because an operator can't be a visionary at the same time. It's very difficult. That's a unique brand. So I'm just curious of your perspective, because my perspective is we, as entrepreneurs, hold ourselves back from finding the right people, or we find somebody lesser than we could because of our own ego and our own self-limiting beliefs. And we're all so terrified that someone's going to steal what we've built. It's like, no, dude, they're going to enhance us when we find them. And it's our job to enhance them and make them have a great life. Am I right, wrong?
100%. In 6 years, I can't tell you how many consults I've had with real estate investors across the United States, but it's a lot. And when I hear, it's usually the newer operator within the last they've only been in the business 3 to 5 years. And they're right at that point where they're about to hire their first executive level employee, for their first high priced employee. And the question is, hey, what do members do when they have this great candidate, but they're really worried that they bring them in, they train them up, and they leave and start their own business? And it's a question I get quite often for that. It's our select level to bottom level premier that are just hiring that executive. And I just always respond with, there's a huge percentage of people that are okay with being a W-2 employee, with being a part of something special, and okay with being number two. They don't need to be the head coach. They're okay being the offense.
They don't want it.
They don't want it. And that's the highest percentage. There are very few people that leave our members' companies that go out and start their own and have success.
Yeah.
And, it's the old adage of, what if I train them and they leave me? Well, what if you don't?
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's train them, Be loyal to them. If they're loyal, you see, like you said earlier, you're investing in people.
Yeah.
If you take that approach, it's very hard for people to leave because of a salary dispute. Most people don't leave because of money. They leave because they feel underappreciated.
Yes.
Or the opportunity for their own continued growth has ceased to exist.
Yeah.
They no longer have the opportunity to continue to grow. And as a great leader, you have great people, you have to show them that they're not at the top of the totem pole. They still have opportunity to grow within your organization. That
Right.
is the key.
Yeah. Cool. All right, rapid fire. I know I interrupted you, so hit me.
That's all right. So give me a superpower. Like if you had to say what your superpower is as a human, as a business owner, as an investor, what is your superpower?
What is my superpower? I would say influence, and again, not just never giving up. That's a superpower to me. So that's it.
I like it. I like the first one I didn't like, never giving up. I'll take that one. Give me one thing that no one knows about you. I think you said one earlier, but give me something that no one knows about you that is of interest.
Very few people know that I have a 7'3" grandson, which is one of 200 people in the entire world that's at that height, but I've never met him. So I'll tell you quick, I have a daughter I gave up for adoption when I was in high school. Her mom and I gave up for adoption. We stayed friends for all the years, and when she was 15, came back and found me. So we have a great relationship. When she was 18, history repeated itself, and she had a child that she gave up for adoption, but it was an open adoption. So she's known him his whole life. I've watched him from afar. This Christmas, I'm going to reach out. I just found his mom on Facebook, and I'm going to reach out to him directly. Looking forward to get to know him, but he is 20 years old, and he's 7'3", and he plays for St. Mary's School. So you can take all your height jokes and shove it, buddy.
Yes. So people, you're sitting down, so no one knows that you're not tall. You could have gotten away with being tall. You gave it away.
I'm 5'9". I'm not average. Just because you're freakishly tall like a string bean. Come on, give me a break.
Talk about a Christmas miracle. You, that's your size, having a grandson that's 7'3".
Yeah, baby.
All right. So you gave a great book recommendation earlier on Who Not How. Is that one that you would share with the audience?
Yeah, I'd say from a business, you had mentioned before maybe a business book and then a regular, another kind of book. But I would, yeah, for sure. That I would say that Who Not How. If you're in, I think every book depends on where you are in the phase of your life. But I think that for me and people that are listening here, if you want to start having a life and inspiring other people and watching your business grow without you having to be there every 2 seconds, start getting into Who Not How and start understanding that money you invest in those people will pay you back tenfold. Just scary putting it out, but you decide to be an investor. You're an investor. You're a business owner. You invest in people.
Is there I asked other members this, that, we read a lot of business books, but sometimes I need a break from business books. And I, specifically for building out teams and things like that, I love biographies about business and sports and things of that nature. Anything like that you read to kind of just get your mind off of business for a little bit?
I don't. I'm a movie guy. If I want to take my mind off business for a little bit, Maverick, Top Gun by far is my favorite. That's the only movie in my life I've went to the theater twice to see it. I've never done that in my life. But
wow.
There are two books that I was in high school when the first one came out, so it was a big deal in my world. There are two books that I recommend for you for your personal growth. One I've read probably 12 times, then one chapter I've read probably 15 or 18 times. It's Un-F Yourself by John Bishop. It's a fantastic book, and he's got a Scottish accent, so it's a great listen. I listen. I don't read, I listen. I'm in the middle of one now that I will recommend. I stumbled onto it, and I'm finding it fascinating. Again, for where I am, my journey is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. That book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, I think his name is. It's a whole new look at saying, your thoughts are put you where you are. And if you want to change your thoughts, you've got to change who you are. Really, I've been fascinated by that book. I'm in chapter 6, and it's been just one of those where I can't stop listening. So.
All right. So if people want to find you, I know where you live. I won't give them your address, but if people want to find you, they are interested in, they're just starting out and they need a mentor, they need coaching, they love what they've heard here. How do people reach out and find you?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure the simplest way, and this is going to sound very pompousy and bougie, but just Google my name. We're all over the place. I mean, you can find it.
We have a first. We have a first here, ladies and gentlemen. He just said, Google me. I do not know who I am. Google does.
You can find us on Facebook. Glenn and Amber Schworm on Facebook. We're on there. Glenn Schworm. We're on all that. We're on whatever social media platform you're on. We're probably on it. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Happy to have a conversation. So yeah,
I
Google me.
Always enjoy the conversation, and I guess I have to start doing more podcasts with you just to be able to get an hour of your time. But I do appreciate you coming on and joining us. Tell the family I said hi. Much love to them. Enjoy getting to know them at a deeper level. And guys, this is what the Collective Genius is. I can tell you that Glenn and his wife Amber and their kids are family friends, but we met in this community.
Right.
And it started all right here. And if you'd like to be in the room with investors like Glenn and others that you will see on this podcast, you can find, obviously, our website is thecollectivegenius.com. And like Glenn said, you can find us. I won't say Google us, but you can find us on all the social media platforms as well. And, obviously, if you love this podcast, we would love for you to like it and subscribe it and tell your friends. Excited to continue these conversations with a genius. I'll give you that tag, Glenn. Thanks again for joining me, and we will see you on the next episode.
Are you ready to scale your real estate business? Visit thecollectivegenius.com, where real estate investors come to scale. Subscribe to the Collective Genius podcast and hit the bell icon to be notified when our next episode releases. And thanks for listening.